This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the niche details of modern warfare and underreported conflict with me, Jake Hanrahan. Today we're speaking to analyst and researcher Tom Lord, and he's going to be speaking to us about a new Greek anarchist militant group or amalgamation of militant groups, which roughly translated are called the Direct Action Cells, DAC. It's very interesting. They're newly formed. They're calling for other people to carry out violence against the state and the police, and they've already claimed 20 attacks, including small IEDs. If you like what we're doing, please do consider supporting us at patreon.com/popularfront. So we're going to talk a little bit later about the recent developments of Conspiracy of Cells Fire, the anarcho-nihilist militant group in Greece. But there seems to have been something different. Before we go into that, there seems to have been what you think might be like a new version of Conspiracy of Cells Fire, right? A new version of CCF. I saw your report and it was very interesting. Tell us about it. Who is this new militant group in Greece?
So they are I wouldn't say that they are the successor to CCF, but they have a lot of similarities, and they are trying to achieve what CCF did organizationally and broadly. That is, CCF ultimately hoped to create a network of revolutionary violence under the same brand, using the same tactics, and agreeing on a doctrine and ideological and political direction, right? So, and they had international aspirations, and they actually achieved that. I mean, Conspiracy of Cells of Fire, which we'll talk about later, I mean, they are still active in as far as from Indonesia to Chile, Argentina, and Mexico, though not so much in Greece, and we'll do an update on them later. So this new network that was announced on the 15th of May in a communication on a Greek anarchist website, and then it kind of made its rounds through various European and Western anarchist websites. Birines Amesis Drasis. Our Greek friends will beat me up for my shit pronunciation. That's fine, but they best translation for them. It's kind of the same thing with CCF. A bunch of like American dorks and the dudes who don't speak good Greek were like, had all these goofy names for them. So first we were saying, all right, in nuclei of immediate action, and somebody in the anarchist community who does speak good Greek sorted us out, and they said, no, fools, direct action cells or nuclei of direct action, pick what you'd like, but direct action cells seems to be the cleanest, DAC. And their hope is to create, as I said, a network of revolutionary violence. And so they actually said in their communique, announcing themselves, it's a unique communique, but really quickly they say, in terms of their purpose, they say the organization of networks of revolutionary violence, or this is our purpose, which will cultivate the radicalization of sections of the revolutionary movement, will create direct action cells by propagandizing through deed, will strike with sharp force persons and structures in the authoritarian edifice based on wider plan of political destabilization, and will develop bonds of solidarity and mutual aid between them. So in this communique, they not only announced themselves, and they released a 60-page, I guess sort of plan of action. You can call it a manifesto if you'd like, in Greek. But it was also a batch claim of 20 attacks that had been carried out starting on the 23rd of January. And so, I mean, if you wanted to get into differences between their capabilities and CCF, so we can. But their current capabilities right now are not as sophisticated as the Conspiracy Cells of Fire. Most of their attacks have consisted of improvised explosive devices that have been fashioned using gas canisters. And I've been trying to work with a couple of, arms dudes. This is not my specialty, but, whether it's just like the little propane camping stove canisters, or whether they're actually taking propane bottles, how they're, I haven't gotten a good picture of them. I have gotten plenty of photographs of the damage they cause, but They've been carrying out a lot of IED attacks on some pretty high-profile targets, and then some, your pretty garden variety Molotov cocktail attacks very early in the morning.
I just want to talk on that point you said about whether it's the gas camping stoves that they've improvised into explosives, or whether it's the actual like big gas canisters. I will say the gas canister stoves that the anarchists in Greece have managed to turn into bombs. Fucking powerful, man. I was with Connell Kieni, cameraman. We were there like 2 years ago when they first started using these like en masse, and they were throwing these stoves, these gas stoves at the police. Very easy to pick up and throw, but honestly, the explosion was. It was like a low-level hand grenade. I'll be honest with you. Like the damage was very like on point. Like that could take your foot off. You know what I mean? It was quite. I don't want to say impressive, but like quite the ingenuity and the level of destruction from those small gas stoves is quite something, you know.
Right. I mean, I don't want to cancel your show by sharing like terrorist tradecraft, but I am curious. Were they fuse lit or like?
I don't know. I mean, obviously they'd exploded by the time we saw any of them. But from what I understand is that they've been improvised, so they change it so that the idea that you can't just blow up the gas stove. They've removed the part of it, or I don't know, and they've managed to make it so that you can literally just light the thing. But again, I don't know. That's what I've been told, but I don't know.
So they opened up with so there was a. You and I discussed in our last discussion, we were talking about there is a real storm of political forces in Greece that are churning up not only more action than we've seen on the streets since 2012, arguably, but also really churning up the underground. And we discussed like the brash of attacks that at the time you and I were discussing. We were like, yeah, there have been all these attacks that have been carried out since January through February. Maybe we had our conversation in March, and we had a pretty good data set of about 24 attacks, and they are all claimed by different cell names. And you and I were theorizing, well, maybe this is just operational security, and they're all related. What's interesting is that this claim revived all those cell names. So among these cells, and you and I were all discussing these, with some amusement and trying to figure out what was going on. But for instance, among the cells that are part of the greater network, direct action cells or nuclei of direct action are cells of anarchist anti-violence, which that doesn't translate as well in English. It's like anti-state violence. Organization of Anarchist Action, Cell of Anti-State Anger, Cell of Revolutionary Solidarity, and interestingly, Cell of Elizaveta Kovalskaya. And so all of these groups, who are claiming these gas canister attacks that were using the same methodology and targeting the same sort of state and private targets, they're all related. And so they opened up, these related cells with 2 IED attacks, actually, using these gas canisters. And the first one on January 23rd was at the entrance of the Institute for Economic and Industrial Research in the Koukaki neighborhood of Athens, like just below the Acropolis. And if you look at the front facade of the building, I mean, it just blew it apart. I mean, it was a really powerful blast. And they carried about 10 more of these throughout Athens, and a couple of them were on the homes of really high-level police personnel. So the Hellenic Police is a centrally controlled, government-controlled asset or agency. They're not locally controlled, so they have generals and ranks like this. In fact, the highest rank you can attain in the Hellenic Police is lieutenant general, and so they attacked the home of a lieutenant, a former police lieutenant general, as well as an active brigadier general in the police. And I won't read the fellow's name, but the reasons for attacking the police lieutenant general are really interesting. If I'll read it really quickly, if you don't mind. They say Officer X was probably the bloodiest MAT officer, and for the uninitiated, the MAT is Greece's standing riot force. They're actually called the police for the reinstatement of order, but they're a standing riot force. And so they say Lieutenant General X was probably the bloodiest MAT officer trainer. From 1994 to 2008, he was on the front lines of the crackdown, being responsible for dozens of incidents of police violence against protesters. He continued his miserable career in high position within the repressive mechanism, redeeming the fact that he was a leading and loyal mastiff of the state and capital. After he was demobilized from the police, he ran in the elections as a candidate for New Democracy, member of parliament. To this day, he writes nonstop, aligning himself with the far-right political agenda and reinforcing fascist perceptions within the repressive mechanisms. So he's also an active political figure. So they firebombed his vehicle and just a lot of high-profile targets throughout Athens, and then 10 more of the same variety in the Thessaloniki area. And I won't bore you by running down the list of all of them, but the most unique and really brazen was they hooked up 2 of these propane bottles. And I don't think they could have been the camping stoves. The way you describe them, they could have been. But there's a NATO base north of Thessaloniki, right near the border, actually, with the country of North Macedonia, in Evzoni. And they actually detonated one of these IEDs right outside of like military residences adjacent to the NATO base. So they're starting to attack, diplomatic and high-level military targets, which is pretty
That's
crazy.
a big deal, actually. That's quite an escalation from, Molotovs at dawn, if you like.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And it's a good little drive. I mean, they would have had to have the device in a vehicle, pack it in, a good little 45, hour long drive, through the night, set it up, and then boogie out of there.
Right, that's a solid 5 years if the police catch you there, you know what I mean? Before you even set the thing off.
Yes, right. Yeah, so far they've claimed 20 attacks. I suspect, so this is really interesting, actually. There was another attack of the exact same variety on the 17th of May. They targeted the Goethe Institute, which is like Germany's federal cultural institute, to try to foster language education and relationship between Germany and other countries. They targeted the Goethe Institute in Thessaloniki with the same kind of IED, blew the side facade off. A bunch of locals actually were trying to put out the fire that, the building caught fire afterwards, and they were trying to put it out until emergency crews got there, and they haven't claimed it yet. And I'm interested to see, just from kind of an organizational perspective and an operational perspective, if it's to be claimed by a smaller cell who will, align themselves with DAC, or if there's going to be a series of these attacks and DAC is just going to keep putting out batch claims for them. I can't work out whether there were a lot of independent anarchist groups who knew, cells who knew one another and had the same methodology and tradecraft, and they were hitting the same targets, and via some sort of conference they came together and decided to claim them all under the same umbrella, or if that was always the plan. That's not clear to me.
Well, this is where it gets confusing, and potentially it's quite clever of them to do it like this. So here's what I mean. So we know that CCF, Conspiracy of Cells Fire, they have in the past carried out certain attacks and used a different name for whatever reasons. We can all speculate. Maybe they, it was a particularly heavy one. There is some rumors that the militants that killed, executed the Golden Dawn guys were CCF. So maybe they just chose a different name for that specific thing. There's many different groups in Greece, militant anarchist groups, that you hear of one attack and then you never hear of them again. It's clear that these people were already active. They chose a different name. Now I'm thinking, is it now then like all of these random different groups that were like one-time use groups were actually just the same group, and now the direct action cells, this new group DAC, are they the umbrella for all of that? Or were there actually loads of different groups and now the DAC is bringing them together as one group? Do you see what I'm saying? I know that's complicated, but it's so fractured. It might be quite a clever way of them doing this to, try and avoid the eyes, or at least avoid the investigations of the cops.
Yeah, it's the same conundrum I have. And, to create an umbrella group for Greeks in particular, poses some real operational concerns for them. Just in terms of the Greek Penal Code, they have this Article 187A, which they've had since 2004. But since CCF, Greek judges have been using it to themselves, like interpret evidence that's presented to them by the Greek police, and then charge people kind of broadly as having membership to terrorist organizations. So, there's an operational advantage and a legal advantage to not having a big umbrella group. However, the disadvantage is that, with any guerrilla organization or any organization in general, having a consistent brand, also has its very clear advantages, and being denied that is kind of problematic if especially if you're part of a social movement.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll become clear as people start getting arrested, which no doubt they will. What ideology have they had? You said there was this 60-page document. I get it, the anarchist militants, but specifically, what kind of stuff have they been saying?
It seems to be post-left anarchism. It has a very anti-civilizational flavor to it. However, there's a lot of left libertarian rhetoric in it that would also orient it, I guess, within the revolutionary radical left as well. But it really seems to have the post-left anti-civ flavor to it. Anti-capitalist. Here, really quickly. I mean, this is interesting. They say,
yeah, give us an example, maybe.
Yeah, if they're asking. And I have a bit of a rough time with ideology myself, but so they say, we created the direct action cells as tools of the struggle to raise once more the axe of war against state and capitalism. We're an organizational association of revolutionary forces which also extends its hand to common struggle with every radical element that agrees with and embraces the political plan and framework we submit, and operates on the principles of horizontal organization, solidarity, and mutual respect. So, I mean, I would imagine that the sort of, like I was mentioning, their international aspirations, and I would imagine that aligned cells that you would find in countries like Chile, or more prominently Colombia right now, which is having a lot of direct action on the streets, would probably be of the chaotic variety, right? Post-left anarchists, anti-civ, anti-capitalist.
One thing I find interesting about this as well, especially CCF and the nihilist or post-left anarchist militant groups, a lot of them they're less focused on this is the utopia and goal that we want to create at the end of this, and more focused on right now we must immediately attack system, the state, whatever, XYZ. Do you think that that's something we're seeing in this, with this new kind of communique that these people have put out?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an insurgent movement, and I think they see from, not just 2020 has been it was a unique year for everybody with the pandemic, but politically, a lot of the forces that are coming together in Greece have just created a really high mass mobilization on the streets. Like I said, you have the same thing in several countries in Latin America. Of course, you had that in the United States and the West, and it persists. And I think they just see a great opportunity to get a lot of solidarity capital and kind of unite a lot of the militant anger and frustration with, our current society. I mean, there's a lot of that going on. And so the idea is that ideologically, I think there's an advantage to it being somewhat loose, because anybody who torches a cop car from Atlanta to Ankara, right, could have their own various reasons for it, yet still, claim it under the same banner.
Right. So, yeah. So this is more of what they're saying is go out and commit these attacks if you kind of have the same ideas as us, and do it under the name of, the direct action cells.
Yeah, and within anarchism as well, they say, okay, this is interesting too. So they feel like within Greece they have lost their edge. They like one of the reasons they said they're forming in Greece specifically was like to be like visibly dangerous again. They don't mention CCF, at least not that I saw, but since CCF, it's clear that they feel that the underground in Greece has lost its way, or even kind of fluttered out. Yeah, I mean, I think they're trying to bring that level of underground struggle back again. They're not again, they don't have the sophistication. We haven't seen any like bank robberies or, they haven't fired any rockets at anyone or anything like that yet. But
right, because normally, well, not normally, but we have seen this in the past where anarchist groups are like, yeah, we're going to reassemble, and it's, it's a load of Molotovs again in Exarchia. Like, there's nothing new about that. However, like as you pointed out at the start, these lot have actually carried out some really quite heavy and daring attacks that could very easily kill if the person is in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? So I guess my question is, how serious do you think this group is? You follow all of this very closely, I know you're very knowledgeable about all this. How serious do you think this group is?
Well, I think they're really serious. And here's another, an interesting thing about the communique is, it's really trying to fortify the constitution of a lot of individuals who are considering underground action. There's a lot of mention about like, hey, this is the path forward, and it's going to lead to either prison or your death, but you have to commit to this. And so, there's a lot of that in there. In terms of their capabilities, this is where I have limitations, because they'll develop a pattern of these attacks using these kind of IEDs and Molotovs, and it'll be fairly consistent. But then you'll hear of a really crazy bank robbery in northern Greece, or someone will get found. Someone will have a couple of kilos of gelatin dynamite on them, and there's so much loose explosives and small arms in Greece that I think. They probably already have a couple of, a few of these cells probably already have a couple of stash houses with what they would call tools of the struggle, which involve a couple of firearms, right? And so, interesting thing too, organizationally, is they, whenever they have something like that, that capability or that asset, they always have to come together on what the target is going to be, and it's fairly significant, and then they agree on an action. So I guess, we're just kind of sitting back and watching for the escalation.
Right. And there's no indication that there's like, I don't know, a general command or anything like that. I mean, obviously they're anarchists, but the Greek ones are usually actually quite well organized. Do you think this is just like more spontaneous or what?
That is fascinating, right? Yes. Yeah, so, no, they're insistent upon horizontal organization. And they even, it's interesting too, they not only appeal to, people to form cells and agree on localized actions under the DAC banner, the Direct Action Cells banner, but they also encourage individual actions. So, that could be a person out in Portland who just, like I said, wanted to go torch an ICE vehicle or something like that and be like, yeah, this was in solidarity with Direct Action cells. So, yeah, but you're right. Within the Greeks, there usually is like a ringleader, a couple of prominent personalities, right?
Exactly. Yeah, like at least a person with leader qualities within a personality that can actually, get people motivated and move them forward. You know what I'm saying?
Right. When we think of like kind of, the Gen Xer age revolutionary anarchist group, Revolutionary Struggle, even though they're horizontally organized, we always think of Paul Arupa and right, the other fellow, right? So, yep. Yes. So I'd imagine there are a couple of there are a couple of ringleaders. I'm not sure, but I mean, it's interesting. I also. I don't know very much about Greek police methods, but I mean, I wouldn't know where to start looking. I mean, I'm sure they have a lot of intelligence gathered on who's a part of these circles and things like this. But it's interesting. It's very diffuse. I mean, these cells could be as small as 2 to 3 people. You used to get videos in the mid 2000s, even up until fairly recently, of an action. So, and maybe they still come out. I just haven't been, on the right Facebook pages, but it would show like 3 people, and they would, Molotov a vehicle at 3:00 in the morning, and they'd dip out and they'd claim it. And so, these cells are probably fairly small. So I couldn't even estimate how many people belong to the organization.
Right, but they've released images, right? There's some photos of the damage that they caused, specifically at the Hellenic American Union offices, stuff like that.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yep, and the Goethe Institute, and then also they hit a building. They released an image of they set an IED outside of a building that had not only had government tax offices, but it also had the Athens University of Economics and Business offices there. So Yeah, they've released photographs of them on their sites, and then they get published elsewhere.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, not to tempt fate at all. I'm not advocating for violence in any way here. But one thing I will say though is that I've noticed that the DAC's targets, they're not as risky or as extreme as like CCF's were before everyone got arrested. Like CCF were outright trying to kill, shooting people in the legs, launching fucking rockets. You know what I mean? They were very, very hardcore. Now DAC, they seem to be well organized in terms of, you know, multiple attacks from, and there are, like you said, there's bombs and IEDs, but they're not, you know, it doesn't look like they're anywhere near on the scale of Conspiracy of Cells Fire. I think 2003 New Year's Eve or New Year that CCF first did their first attacks, I think it was, and they burned down like so many luxury car stores, you know, shops, like fucking like 10 of them or something like that. They just burned them to the ground. You know, it was quite a big kind of landing, if you like. This doesn't quite have the same, you know, I don't know, have the same impact, if you like, you know, from what they're doing.
Well, that's interesting, though. I mean, I guess there is kind of, yes, like what I think it was January, February 2011. You're right. There was just like attacks on all these car parks, and they were fairly unsophisticated, but it was a brash of attacks, and it was claimed by CCF, and that's kind of, you know, in terms of a batch claim, that's kind of what we have going on here. And then, I mean, Conspiracy Cells of Fire upped their game so quickly. I mean, it wasn't long after that until they, you know, they had Kalashnikovs and were, you know, started a parcel bombing campaign attacking major heads of European states, right?
Yeah, actually, I forgot about that. Yeah, as well, and fucking Project Nemesis or whatever it was, where they were delivering acid and chemicals and letter bombs all over the shop. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I forgot about all that. It was quite serious. So you're saying, we said at the start briefly, you were saying that Conspiracy of Cells Fire, Popular Front's favorite Greek militant group, not favorite because we like them, just a very interesting group. They're kind of, they've been out, right? A few of them got out of prison. Another one has been arrested. There's some news. What's been happening?
Yes, well, I mean, I guess I have the rare opportunity to make a correction of the very first time I came on. So I should have known this. Two of these fellows got out in 2017, fairly quietly, actually. But so anyone who's followed Conspiracy Cells of Fire will remember in 2013, there was a bank robbery in this northern Greek town of Kozani. 4 people were arrested. And the photographs, like, no one will forget it if they're an observer of Greece. So you saw this kid with this really iconic face. I say kid, he's a 21-year-old dude. You know, he's like one of our peers. But he had, after we got the photographs that weren't shopped by the Hellenic police, this kid was like being hauled away in cuffs in a ballistic vest, and it looked like he had been hit in the face with a rifle butt. I mean, it was rough. And then his 3 counterparts all looked really badly beaten up too. They had clearly been tortured by the Hellenic police, and so they're in the middle of what anarchists call a bank expropriation,
Also known as a bank robbery, I should say.
right? Yeah, and yeah, that always cracks me up. And so the 4 individuals, the fellow who looked like he had his face bashed in with a rifle butt, that was Nikos Romanos, and he was actually the best friend of Alexis Grigoropoulos. And on the day that Alexis Grigoropoulos was shot and killed by police officer Korkonias in the Exarchia neighborhood. He was a 15-year-old kid. He and his friends got into an altercation with these members of the Special Guard in the Exarchia neighborhood of Athens. And Officer Korkonias, who was known to be a hothead, he was called Rambo, pulled his service weapon and he shot and killed this 15-year-old kid. And the kid that held Alexis Grigoropoulos as he died, and I don't mean to be insensitive or like romanticize this or ghoulish about it, but you know, his best mate was Nikos Romanos, and a central figure of CCF. And so he was the young fellow who had, you know, on that day been captured in the Kozani robbery. And his 3 counterparts, Dimitris Politis, Andreas Bourzoukos, and Yannis Michaelidis. And Yannis Michaelidis is also known to the show as the Syntagma Archer, who during the pitch of mass mobilization in the streets during the austerity riots against the Samaras government in 2011 was seen with a recurve bow, first firing at Parliament and then firing shafts at police officers. And so these four figures were caught by police for the Kozani robbery. and then sent to Korydallos, I believe, and then it might have been split up among different prisons. I know a few of them ended up in agricultural prisons, but Nikos Romanos ended up going on hunger strike in 2014, not long after being arrested. There was a lot of Greeks out in the streets for him, and then after 6 years of serving his sentence, for arcane reasons that are unknown to me, the Greek legal system is what it is. He was released. He had served his time, and so he's actually. I couldn't give you an update on the dude. He's actually written some really interesting work. Actually, he has a piece that people can find on anarchia.net, their library, and it's called "The Case of Individual Terrorists" by Nikos Romanos. I really recommend giving it a read, and even better.
How do you spell that? How do you spell that website for people that are going to look for it?
Yeah, ANARCHIJA.net.
Mm-hmm.
You can also find a link to it if you go to CrimeThink. They did an interview with him. It's called "Putting Ideals on Trial: The Greek State's Laboratory of Repression," an interview with Nikos Romanos, imprisoned anarchist, and that was just before he got out in July 2019. And it's fascinating. It's anyone who's into this kind of thing, especially particularly to the Greek legal system, give it a read. It's really interesting. So he is out, and then, like I said, Dimitris Politis, that poor fellow, that was the absolute worst Photoshop. If you go to my Twitter, you can see just how badly it's pretty recent. It's near the top of the timeline. You can see just how badly the Greek police's Photoshop of like this kid's beating was. It's ridiculous.
Right, they like smashed up his neck and then used basically MS Paint to fucking cover it up in the mugshot. Fucking prick.
Yeah, I'm doing him too much justice by even saying Photoshop.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, mate. And I haven't heard anything about Andreas Bourzakos. In terms of torture, like that guy's face was just swollen like a pumpkin. It was bad. They beat the hell out of that poor dude. So that is how things go in Greece. So those three are out, and then our friend the Syntagma Archer, he had actually escaped from a agricultural prison, and we discussed this last time. And he was on the lam for quite a while. And
sorry, Tom, maybe just explain who that guy is, because there's a lot of people that will not have heard the previous episodes we've done talking about these groups.
Yeah, so Yanis Michailidis, he is I think the fourth. I think he and Nikos Romanos like the two most famous members of CCF just from their actions, and like they've been wild. And Greek anarchists and Greek militant leftists are damn good at prison escapes, and even these these little farm prisons or maximum security, it doesn't matter, they are about it. So he was serving his sentence for he was alleged having membership to conspiracy cells of fire, which is recognized by the Department of State as a terrorist group. I mean, that's how serious they are. And so he was serving his time. He managed to escape from this agricultural prison, and then he had hooked up with other anarchists who are not alleged by the Greek state to be members of conspiracy cells of fire. They're just other anarchists, and they had been conducting actions together, and he and two female comrades expropriated a bank, robbed a bank, and they netted 150k euros, got out of there, and then they got captured in a vehicle. They were driving a little Toyota hatchback, and he had a Kalashnikov on him that he had modified himself. He had put his own stock on it, a submachine gun, a couple of handguns, handheld radios, disguises. They had a lot of crazy kit. And then I think they raided the safe house where he had been storing other quote tools of the revolution, and interrogated a couple other people. So that's Yanis Michailidis, and as we discussed, he's also known. He's better known as the Syntagma Archer. His father is actually and I don't want to discuss the personal details of people's families because that's ghoulish, but his father's a well-known composer in Greece, actually, an artist. And he's all of these four individuals we discussed are like really well educated. They all like got academic awards as young students, and like were really promising. I think Yanis Michailidis was actually awarded a laptop by the Ministry of Education, like the minister herself, at the time, because of his accolades as a student. Was a really smart dude and was known to be a hobby recreational marksman and archer. And so Yeah, he's iconically seen in 2011 during the pitch of Greek protests there in Syntagma Square, which stands for Constitution Square, firing his, he's wearing a gas mask and a woolly hat, and he's got his recurve bow, and he's firing at the police. And so anyways, yes, so that they carried out that action. He and his two female comrades, they were arrested, and he is currently in prison, and he had a May 31st court date, but it's been pushed back to the 10th of May, or excuse me, the 10th of June. And he recently released a pretty short communique, which people can read on various, indie media or various anarchist websites. It's been posted several places, no blogs, places like that. So yeah, he released a little communique, and I have tremendous respect for this guy, and right, we're not we're not in the business of endorsing terrorist action or guerrilla actions or anything like that. But in terms of just basic honor or whatever, he's trying to assume all of the charges. He's assuming all responsibility for the weapons as well as for the robbery they committed, and the big thrust of his communique is trying to get his other two female comrades exonerated and take all of the heat, take the responsibility upon himself.
Wow, yeah, that's quite something. And he's like, he's not. He could quite easily probably get quite a fancy lawyer and that via his family and that, but this guy's like, nah, I'm gonna firm it and go like that. And you were saying that one of them, the guy that got rearrested, right?
Yes, yeah, that's the archer. He's a fellow who got rearrested.
Oh, right. So he got right. So he got out and then robbed the bank.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. So he got arrested in the Kozani robbery in 2014 with the other four fellows and been charged already as a terrorist member. He broke out, was on the land for quite a while, and then they somehow armed themselves up again. And here's for the nascent underground that are the direct action cells, you're not going to have a hard time getting a gun in Greece and then deciding as a cell what to do with it. So yeah, he armed up and was well armed actually. If you search Yanis Michailidis, you can see all the Greek police love to post ganima, right? They're spoils of war. Whenever they capture neat stuff, they love to photograph it. And anyways, I guess police around the world love to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see all the kid he was caught with. It was really wild. And yeah, he was out there carrying on the revolution all on his own, man, not necessarily even under the CCF banner. But his three mates are out and presumably living fairly normal lives. I mean, I think they are all probably still fairly committed to their politics, but who knows? People change, and prison can be rough. But I mean, they had a lot of solidarity in prison, so they probably stuck with the path. But yeah, Mr. Michailidis, a friend of the archer, that dude's probably pretty fucked. I guess we'll see his sentencing on the 10th of June.
Wow. Yeah, very interesting. And one thing I will say about the Greek anarchists specifically, out of anywhere else in Europe, their ability to organize and reorganize, like, it's actually quite incredible. Like, not saying it's good or bad or whatever, it's just their ability to do it. Like you said, they always, no matter how many times they seem to go to prison, get caught, get shot, get killed, they either manage to escape prison, get new machine guns, rob another bank. Like, it's mad, man. I guess that's what comes with the dedication, I guess, to this ideology.
I'm not doing this to increase my own prospects of having, more work to do. I genuinely see this as a product of whatever my analysis is worth, but Greece is coming to a head. And so, and we mentioned it before, and I'll be brief about it, but there's this really interesting figure who is the current minister of protection and order. It's basically their justice minister. It's like our, attorney general, and his name is Michalis Chrysochidis. And he's known for, he used to be part of the socialist, PASOK party. He is known for putting away the most high-profile Greek terrorists in the country, starting with the 17 November and then the members of Revolutionary Struggle. And he was brought over to the right-wing New Democracy Party to be the Minister of Protection and Order in order to I'm using the language of New Democracy's policy, but that is to clean up the lawlessness in Greece. And it's so crazy. So there are several major sweeping reforms that New Democracy wants to make to Greek society, and a part of that is they want to just get rid of the anarchist element entirely. And what's so interesting is that despite Chrysohidis' success against small terrorist cells, it's actually further entrenching anarchists as a part of the permanent political fabric of Greece. And so these efforts have been to raid squats, and they have successfully raided and evicted squats that have been around for as long as 14 years throughout mainland Greece, as well as on the island of Crete. And most recently, police in Athens, in the Syri neighborhood, they closed down this squatted theater. It was a theater that had fallen into disrepair, and it was part of the Ministry of Culture. It was a Ministry of Culture building. It had fallen into disrepair, and so a collective of artists and theater folks got together and they revived it, and they made it this awesome self-managed cultural space. You've actually spoken about this place on an episode with Molly Krabopoulos, actually. Yeah. And it's dope. It's Embros Theater, and so the police sealed it off with a bunch of cinder block, and they cordoned off the street. And then at night, like a crush of hundreds of people showed up outside, all of them with sledgehammers. They knocked down the block, and it's blocks, and it's since been reopened. But what's really going to come to a head, and this is just, so you had the Koufoudinas hunger strike, who was the key figure of 17 November, and he went on hunger strike because he was protesting a prison transfer. That's mobilized people. You have the underground revive, but when shit is really going to hit the fan in Greece, and it's already happened. So yesterday, there was a survey crew in the neighborhood of Exarchia, which, for those who don't know, it's a famed neighborhood. It's a very bohemian neighborhood, artist neighborhood, great place in the center of Athens, and it is a haven for anarchists, the far left, and various anti-authoritarian elements. Most of them not militant, just doing their thing. So the survey crew was there, and they got chased out, and I think they had to hightail it, like they were probably in fear for getting roughed up, and they were there to start doing survey work to lay groundwork for the planned metro station that's just going to rip up through the center of this beautiful square. And like Exarchia is such a place where like Navarino Park and these places like where the community has come together to like tear down whole car parks and structures like this, metropolitan structures, to like build, beautiful parks that actually hold like gardens and, recreational areas for children. And, they don't like this kind of thing. They don't want a metro station. And that is going to be, I think that's where it's all really going to come to head, of all the issues and all the battle. And, it's clearly an ongoing campaign between the state, between New Democracy, with, the general of this campaign against the anarchists being Chrysohidis. He's also trying to take on organized crime, by the way. They've just started a brand new unit because there's been a rash of shootings across Greece involving their mafia. But, they created a brand new unit within the Hellenic police to now police university campuses. Police have not been allowed on Greek campuses since 1974, because in 1973, it's 1975, because in 1973, under the fascist right-wing junta, they massacred 24 students during an uprising on a university campus in Athens, the Polytechnic. So yeah, this is the battle, and this is kind of the order of it. And I think the Exarchia fight is where it's really going to come to a head, and it'll be interesting because they're not going to give up that space easily.
Yeah, as we spoke about when we last did an episode about Greece, it's really fertile ground right now for militant action, considering the history of Greece and the current situation. And I think even last time we were saying, like, surely there will be another group, and now it's here, direct action cells, right?
Yep. Yeah. And, I'm interested to know who makes this up, because a lot of the interesting thing about CCF is that they were young. They were in their early 20s, and they just developed the capability very rapidly, and they were pissed off. Not only had their friend been shot, but the death of their friend and their confrontation with police, that is, of the formative members, is what just kicked off this explosion of uprisings that have been ebbing and flowing in Greece for the 21st century. And they just, they got to it. Prior to Conspiracy Cells of Fire, all of the Greek guerrillas that had a capability, they were much more mature. Revolutionary struggle, they're like all in their 40s, and were, by the time they were firing RPGs at the U.S. Embassy. So That'll be interesting. I think DAC is a young crowd, and again, I'm not trying to be ghoulish or encourage violence, but it'll be interesting. As an analyst, it'll be interesting to see how they develop that and see if they get beyond their current methodology.
Yeah, no, again, same, me as well. Like when I get like not excited, but like animated maybe about these groups, it's just because as a reporter covering war and conflict, and specifically irregular warfare, guerrilla warfare, street, urban combat, whatever, it just really fucking interests me in how well organized or how they're managing to keep coming back. So yeah, no, agreed. We're definitely not advocating violence. We're not saying it's good. We're not saying it's bad. It just is what it is. Is there anything else you want to say about this group, mate, before we wrap this one up?
No, man, I'm pretty much set. What I will be interested to see is how quickly, and I'm pretty confident that they will, how quickly they achieve their international aspirations. Like we said, like you still see actions claimed by, I still see, you and I still see actions claimed by conspiracy cells of fire in Indonesia, for Christ's sake, and they're fairly serious. They're like on army checkpoints and things. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, I will be interested to see if in like Colombia, for instance, which is roiling. I think Malaysia is probably beyond the point of messing around with little anarchist outfits, and they're just finding established guerrilla groups. So that maybe not that, but it'll be interesting to see if in France or Italy, you start seeing, or Germany, lots of potential in Germany for there to be attacks under a cell that is aligning themselves with the DAC. In fact, I think a lot of the folks who do some of the best translation of the Greek communiques, Greek anarchist communiques into English are actually German comrades.
Right. Yeah, no, actually, we should mention that quickly. CCF is basically kind of they've outsourced, if you like, or franchised into different countries, just into this kind of whole post-left militant mix. How successful has that been?
It's been really successful, and they also have an Italian counterpart, FAI.
Yeah. They were the guys that shot that like nuclear or like power guy in the knees. Like this is when I first ever started writing about them, and yeah, it was like CCF FAI, like a kind of joint thing.
FAI is crazy, and a lot of work could be done on the kind of unspoken nexus between Greek and Italian anarchists, particularly CCF, FAI, and I have now seen international brands of FAI in South America as well, and throughout Latin America as well. So. They're still rolling as far as I know. Like I'll get a very serious FAI attack or action will come up, not irregularly, and this is a whole different rabbit hole that I don't want to go down. But God, a really fascinating country in terms of its street militant scene is Italy, and has been since like the 50s or 60s. Not only do they have very robust far left and post left militant movements that are about it, but they also have a crazy universe of neo-fascist groups that are really active on the street and clash all the time. So yeah, CCF and FAI are still rolling throughout the world. Just I haven't seen a CCF attack claimed in Greece for quite a while. And even Yanis Michailidis, I don't think his most recent actions, probably for legal reasons, which is smart, but maybe just because the group has been dissolved, or he's trying not to bring any heat on old comrades. But even his last actions weren't claimed under the name of CCF. So unless I'm mistaken, and somebody might end up correcting us on that.
Yeah, man. Okay, mate. Thank you very much. That's been really informative as usual. Tell people where they can see your work. Mention about your newsletter, your Twitter. I've been really enjoying the newsletter, man. I subscribed. I've been reading everything you put out there.
And I appreciate that, man. I'll try to keep it fairly regular. On Twitter, that's the best place to see a collection of all my garbage. I am at Potemkin Brain, or the space wannabe wonk. I have a Substack that's linked on there, and then I publish a couple of articles online, and then trying to get into some journals. But yeah, anything that I put out, you can find on Substack, the space wannabe wonk, or at Potemkin Brain on Twitter. Hey, thanks a lot, man. It was fun as always.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Cheers. This is a random one, but if anyone can help me try and do some kind of documentary with these more militant anarchists in Greece, hit me up at hanrahan@protonmail.com. hanrahan@protonmail.com. I've been trying for years. It's very difficult. I got very close with doing it, and then a lot of people ended up getting arrested and sent to prison. Not because of me, because of their antics. So yeah, if anyone can help me out, I'm still on a mission to get that documentary made one day for Popular Front. But anyway, that was Tom Lord talking to us about the direct action units, this new supposed cell of militant post-left anarchists in Greece. Very interesting. Definitely check Tom Lord out. He's doing a lot of really interesting work on the Greek street politics militant scene that a lot of people are just not covering. If you like what we're doing here at Popular Front, please do consider subscribing to our Patreon for loads of bonus stuff. That is patreon.com/popularfront. For the price of like £1 a month, you get bonus episodes. You get to support Popular Front. The more we make there, the more we produce. Ask anybody on the Patreon, they'll tell you that much is true. There's a lot of hard work going on here. This episode was sponsored by Oracle Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, USA. They're an independent coffee business selling only fair trade products. See them at 3875 Southwest Bond Avenue, 97239. The episode was also sponsored by Grindcore House, a pair of independent coffee shops in Philadelphia, USA, one in South, one in West. Find them on social media at Grindcore House. The episode is also sponsored by Propagandopolis, an outlet selling and writing about historical conflict propaganda from around the world, various different wars. It's very interesting, very cool prints. Buy prints at propagandopolis.com. Use the promo code POPULARFRONT10 for 10% off. Follow us on social media, Instagram at popular.front, YouTube, youtube.com/popularfront. I guess that's not really social media, is it? But yeah, watch our docs there. Twitter at popularfrontco. My Twitter at Jake_Hanrahan, HANRAHAN. Go and tell me how much you hate and despise me there. That seems to be quite constant. Very boring behavior, but there you go. Go to our website, popularfront.co, not .com. A lot of people saying it's not there. No, .co. I've said it 100 times. www.popularfront.co. It's basically a landing page. You'll find what we're all about. You'll see all of our links, everything. Again, please do consider supporting us. Patreon.com/popularfront or popularfront.co/support. There's different ways of doing it there. The music in this episode, the intro was by an artist called Home, and the outro is by Sam Black. You can listen to Sam Black's music at samblackpf.com. Thank you to the high tier Patreons. They are the following: Thumper, Lisa Milgram, Lupita Valez, Bradley Davies, Laura RX, happy birthday, A. Nicole, Manny, Travis Lieberman, Cherry, Ben Marshall, Dallas Dunn, LD50 Seattle, MJ, K Glitter Vulcan, Meredith Waters, Bethany Swoveland, C. O'Donnell, Adam H, Larson 8669, Karante, Bjorn Kirsten, Diamond Steen, Jacob, Michael O'Connor, Zach Packard, Todd Cravens, Alexander, Nicholas Butter, Ron Swanson, JD, Jav, Ian Froese, James Cully, Michael Akakan, Ethan, Fitz Madrid, Ed Coulthard, Johnny LaFleur, Clayton Taylor, Max Barone, Ben, Liam Williams, Chris Cusimano, Degenerate Zero Alpha, Jojo Arani, DR, Trey Nance, Amy R, Rubicon, Frank Austin, Amelia Me, Nawaiz, Christina Ravetti, Freya Northman, Ali Hunter, Moody Al-Rashid, Bill Wilson, Andrew Hurley, Vida Provost, Brian McLaughlin, Tom Lochrin, Young Wasabi, Tony Bin, Adam Bergsnyder, JL, Sebastian, Stephen Davila, Anthony Kabarak, Dan Dunham, Fletcher Tate, Chad Walker, Diana Govanek, Lawrence Abrahams, Peter McCormack from What Bitcoin Did, Emily Molly, Axel Iverson, Christopher Martin, Ryan Sandercock, and Moritz Zumbul. Thank you all so much. Without you, as I always say, honest to God, this would fall to bits. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate all the support. If there's anything you want to see from Popular Front and you're in that high tier Patreon category, please do DM me on the Patreon. Much appreciated. Anyway, if you want to support us, patreon.com/popularfront.